Now, this may sound a little bit strange, but I want you to go back to your childhood. Think about your childhood. Do you remember how you learned your native language? How was your learning experience? If you look at your nephew, niece, or any other younglings around you, you may have noticed that they are always clingy, as in they're or always, by your side. They're trying to imitate you as much as they can, right? Next, I want you to imagine an old woman working in a farm from dusk till dawn in a small village growing vegetables. Now, this woman didn't graduate from college, let alone graduate from high school, and didn't get any kind of formal education for her language. But besides not being able to read or write, she can speak her native language fluently. It's amazing, right? As you can see, neither books nor any other material is compulsory for learning how to speak a new language. Nevertheless, you should still use the materials and the methods that I have mentioned in the earlier steps to better study your target language and to learn to read and write in that language correctly, unless you don't care about learning how to read and write. All things aside, while studying a language is important to achieve your aims, what is more important is how you treat the language itself. Most people treat a foreign language as a set of words and rules that you need to know to speak, but that's hardly the case. I have had many students who could complete an English grammar proficiency test with a relatively high score, but when asked to talk about their daily lives, they could only speak with great difficulty. The reason people have this problem is that they lack any kind of exposure to the foreign language in real life. So how has been your English learning experience so far? Do you go to a language course for like 6 hours a week or get private tutoring for 4 hours a week? Or do you just simply study an hour every week? But do you actually use the language? Do you go outside and interact with people? Do you go outside and buy some eggs, for example? Do you actually use the language itself? How was your answer to these questions? Even if you live in a foreign country speaking your target language, unless you start using the language itself, you will always have fluency problems. I have seen people who live and work in foreign countries far away from their homelands, but they could barely speak the language of that country despite living there for many years. The reason is simple. They seclude themselves from living the language and they live inside their safe zone all the time. Whatever language you're aiming to learn, you can't learn to speak a foreign language just by memorizing a study book. A language is the identity of a country's culture and its people. As I mentioned earlier, while I was studying Japanese, I tried to indulge myself, immerse myself as much as I can to Japanese culture. I would try to watch lots of movies. I would try to watch dramas, animes. I would try to read Japanese mangas in Japanese, at least the ones that I could read. And besides from reading and listening to things, I would go outside, make new friends, Japanese friends whom I could speak Japanese with. I would try to put myself in that culture as much as possible. And at the last part, I went to Japan and I actually lived there. So if you have the opportunity, you should also be doing something like this to improve your English. In the next step, I will talk about something called immersion. Now, immersion is really important because unless you immerse yourself to the culture and the people of that language, it will be really hard for you to master any kind of foreign language.